Hi, everybody. I am Miss Emily, and today we're going to talk a little bit about percents. Now, before we talk about percents in terms of what they mean with numbers, we're going to talk about the word percent. So the word percent is made up of two smaller words, per and cent. Per meaning for each, and cent meaning 100. So when we put that together, the word percent literally means for each 100. Now, with numbers, we can take percents of numbers like this. Say we want to know what 5% of 300 is. We can do that by, first of all, replacing this percent with that for each 100. And then I'm going to split my 300 into three groups of 100, like I've done here. So if I have 5 for each 100, I'm going to have 5 of this first 100, 5 for the second 100, and 5 for the third 100. And when I put those together, I can do 5 plus 5 plus 5, or 5 times 3 for my 300s, and I would get 15. So 5% of 300 is 15. So a couple examples for you. Say we have 8% of 400. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is instead of saying 8%, I'm going to say 8 for each 100 of 400. If I have 400s and 8 from each of those, it's going to be 8 times 4, which will give me 32. 8% of 400 was 32. My next example is 11% of 600. So that means I'm going to have 600s and 11 from each of those hundreds. So I can do 11 times 6 to get 66. So 11% of 600 is 66. Now I can apply this to word problems as well. So say I have a parking lot with 300 vehicles in it. And I know that 12% of the vehicles are motorcycles. And I want to know how many vehicles in the parking lot are motorcycles. Really what this question is asking is it's asking me to find 12% of 300. So again, since I have 300s and 12 from each of those, I can do 12 times 3 to get 36. So then I know that there are 36 motorcycles in the parking lot. Then my next question is about a cell phone. So a cell phone costs $200 and the sales rate is 8%. And I want to know how much tax is added. So really it's what this problem is asking me to do is find 8% of 200. So 200s, 8 times 2, that's going to give me 16. So the amount of sales tax added on to the price of the phone is going to be $16. Right? Now, not all of the numbers that we're going to work with are nice, pretty numbers like 400 and 600. Sometimes we end up with numbers in between, like 250. So what we're going to do here is we're going to split it into the hundreds and then the half groups of hundreds, or the 50s. So if I want to take 6% of 250, I'm going to do 6 for the first 100, 6 for the second 100, and then right here I'm going to do 3. The reason I do 3 is because 50 of my 250 is half of 100, so I'm going to take half of 6, which is 3. So altogether I'm going to have 6 plus 3, which gives me 15. So 6% of 250 is 15. A couple more examples for this. I've got 4% of 450. Again, I'm going to split that up into my hundreds and my groups of 50. I have 4 hundreds, so 4% of 4 hundreds is going to give me 16. And my 4% of 50, half of 4 is 2, so it's going to give me 2. If I add those together, 4% of 450 will give me 18. Now what about 8% of 150? So again, split that up, do 8% of 100, which gives me 8, and 8% of 50, which is half of 8, or 4. Add those together, and 8% of 150 is 12. Now, this next question is all about a diner. So a diner sells 350 hamburgers in 1 week. 30% of those hamburgers were served with fries, and I want to know how many hamburgers were served with fries. Really what this question is asking us to find 30% of 350. So again, I'm going to break this down into my hundreds, 30% of 300, and my 50s, 30% of 50. Now my 30% of 300 is 90, and my 30% of 50 is 15. So add those together and I get 105. So I know that the dinner served 105 hamburgers with fries that week. Now, there are a couple special percents that I want to go over as well. There are 5 of these that we're going to talk about today. The first one is 0%, none of it. It's kind of like if there's a 0% chance of rain today, that it's not going to rain at all. 25% means a quarter of it, and we're going to do that by taking half of a half. We'll talk about an example for that in just a second. Next is 50%, or half of it. 100% means all of it, and 200% means all of it 2 times for 200s. So say I have 100% of 20. 100% is all of it. So 100% of 20 is going to be all of 20, or 20. Now 0% of 20, 0 meaning none of it, I'm going to have 0. Now 25% of 20. So 25% is a quarter of it, and I'm going to find that by doing half of a half. So half of 20 is 10, and half of 10 is 5. So a quarter of 20, or 25% of 20, is 5. Now 50% of 12, 50% is half of it. So half of 12 is going to give me 6. Now 25% of 12 is half of a half. So half of 12 was 6, and half of 6 is 3. So 25% of 12 is 3. 50% of 100, 50% is half of it. So half of 100 gives me 50. And last example is 200% of 10. 200 being all of it twice, so I'm going to have 2 10s, which gives me 20. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys learned something about percents. Have a great one, and we'll see you next week.